Really wanted to commit to taking a robust assignment from the ELA 9th grade curriculum and bringing it into an ELD 1 class and keeping it as engaging and interesting for the students as possible, but also making it accessible for them. And essentially, the goal of this assignment is students learn punctuation in terms of dialogue and exploring how writers use punctuation in order to convey dialogue, looking at characters in terms of external and internal evidence of internal motivations and internal characteristics, fleshing out their own dialogue that students will create between two characters from a story that they have read, and then fleshing that out again into building kind of a RPG playground game that the students built. So the first thing that we did is we studied rules of punctuation. I then selected key chunks of text from the story that we're reading, the scholarship jacket, removed all punctuation. Students were then tasked with restoring the punctuation. And this also gave students a nice insight in terms of the overarching storyline before they actually dove in and read the short story. From there, we looked at different character selection screens and had conversations in terms of why are characters drawn this way, how the characters behave in relation to one another, and as well looked at visually, why were they drawn this way and why what visual clues the artists have given in terms of internal characteristics and motivation and relationships to one another. From there, students selected a game, and together they took on specific characters and they looked at advantages, disadvantages, internal characteristics, and then external evidence, visual cues, action, speech of those internal characteristics, what their motivations were, their temperament, and their personality. We then read the story, and as we're reading the story, students contributed to these slides. For each character, they added external evidence. Why do we see a character behaving a certain way externally? But internally, what does that say about that character? And that prompted some really good discussions. From there, we then had the students select two characters, drafted their own dialogue that was somehow related to the story, almost as if it didn't make the cutting room, it ended up on the cutting room floor in terms of the final draft of the published story. So this is a dialogue that happens kind of outside of the storyline, but it's still in line in terms of the scope of the story as well as the characters. So they were tasked with quite a lot here in terms of flexing their punctuation skills, but also their real deep understanding of those characters, and then ultimately flesh those out into a game where they build a scenario, they bring in that dialogue that they've written, they design the characters visually to represent and kind of give clues